Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. Ooh, I've been on the flex since flex zone. Neighborhood all in your eardrums. I ain't never scared like Bone Crush. Boy, I got God, don't fear none. My line busy, take no calls. Feels like I don't have no flaws. Snakes in the grass, cut those off. Your old squad shitty, my bros raw. No breaks, we go, 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 go. Throw shade, that's a no, 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 no. Go high, go low, low, low. Like spinning in a 644. Cash money like 504. Ball like AD24. No sleep, need more, more, more. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. Ooh, I'm a real one, my day one. Try speak up, can't say none. Try dig dirt, there ain't none. I make the money that save up. 10 to 80, my save ones. Take to the top on the base one. New car, race on. Fast lane, pace on. With the booyah, that's a flex. Not human, I am from another planet. I'ma teleport, might vanish. I'ma wake up, do damage.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CCF, the Colorado Collegiate Focus. You can see we are down a member today, but we still have myself, Tony Casolo, covering the Buffs, the Falcons, and the Rams. And over here, this guy. Whoa, I can't do it. This guy. Super fan, Rick Baum. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, Rick?
Hey, everybody. Rick Baum, the resident Air Force super fan and co-host of this amazing program. And as Tony said, we are down one member. We're hoping that John gets well soon. So we next man up, right, Tony?
Yes, exactly. Prayers up to John. We're thinking about you, buddy, once you get well. Rick, tell me what's going on in that background, man. This is not the normal Air Force flag I'm used to here. This is beautiful. What do we got going on here?
Well, I made a decision along with my wife to proceed from Annapolis, Maryland after the victory over Navy and celebrating a little bit. We're in Duck, North Carolina on the Outer Banks and doing some vacationing and heading towards Raleigh, and I will, of course, leave my wife behind, return to Denver, and go to CSU. That's what I do.
Super fan, man. Dedicated to the cause. I love it. So I think you started it off with a pretty good spot there. We want to jump in to what we saw with our CSU Rams. It's another close game for the Rams as they traveled to UNLV to play the Rebels. I talked to you guys. I know I was going to piss some people off up in Fort Collins, but I'm used to that as a Buffs fan. Yes, I was cheering for UNLV. I made the comment earlier in the year that I only hate you guys 1 week a year. I guess it has to be 2. Yes, I am a UNLV Rebels fan because of my brother, and UNLV was able to pull out the last-second field goal win, winning 25-23. It was another, I would say, disappointing game. CSU was right there, kind of in control the whole first half. Their defense played great, Rick, holding UNLV to 6 field goals. So, yes, while UNLV was able to move the ball, they could not convert. And CSU did a great job of keeping them out of the end zone. They were able to get some turnovers, forced a fumble on UNLV's first possession of the game when UNLV again was driving. Kind of had that bend but don't break mentality. One thing that I thought was great, if you could take a silver lining out of this game, was wow, we finally saw a running game out of CSU. They ran for 100.
Where's that been?
Von Shield, I think is how you pronounce his name. That kid looks great. I couldn't believe he's been running third string or lower most of the season. He had some great runs, was able to rip off a 52-yarder at one point that set up one of the Rams' touchdowns. But again, when you needed to make the plays, when you needed that last stop, UNLV was able to drive the ball, got some huge chunks in the passing game, something that we have seen out of the Rams secondary this year. They were able to kick the last second field goal. Anything else that you saw from the game, Rick, that you found interesting or could parse out for a future matchup that may be coming up soon?
Well, I'll tell you what, Allegiant Field is an amazing venue. We were there last year. Of course, the Las Vegas Raiders call that place home. What an interesting place to have a soccer game. 6 field goals. I think Paisano's their kicker, and man, he's deadly. I'll tell you. One thing that I noticed, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago. So Fowler Nicolosi is the future, of course, of this program. But it seems like every other game, he reverts back a little bit, and he looks like the redshirt freshman that he is, and he's just going to get better.
Yeah, he did have an efficient game, but you didn't see those explosive plays like you saw against like a CSU or late in that Boise State game. He was efficient, 21 of 32 for 235 and a touchdown. You're never going to be mad about that from a freshman. But yes, there was kind of lacking a little bit of explosiveness there.
Yeah, and I hope Air Force was paying attention to how they were covering the tight end underneath and Horton specifically, because they were doubling him, but they would fall at the last minute to go and try to support the run or whatever CSU had reverted to at that point.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. My brother had actually made the comment. We watched the game together, obviously from a UNLV perspective, but he noticed those underneath routes. And there were a couple of times where either Horton or Holker were able to get loose on those. And CSU's really just made a living working those underneath routes, those shallow crosses, kind of letting everything develop, easy pitch and catch for the freshmen. But you're right. UNLV did some stuff there that I think, as you mentioned, Air Force in a future matchup could take advantage of. One thing I did see again, Kamara is just an absolute stud. That guy is on an absolute roll. Another sack and a half, leading the defense. We had a bunch of guys getting double-digit sacks. We had Jack Howell, Chase Wilson, everyone. That defense played really well. Rick, are you worried about that defense going up against it in a future matchup?
Absolutely. I'm, and we'll talk about it here in a second. I'm very concerned about this game, and specifically because this is that trap scenario, right? You play a service academy game. And then you go to Fort Collins, and then you play another service academy game, and this is a big deal. And that defense really continues to get better. They were the picture of bend but not break.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, it seems to me that they found a guy that can maybe be opposite of Kamara. Maybe it's only going to be a few more games, but man, where did Marshawn Oxley come from? I think he's a true freshman, had 2.5 sacks on the game. So not only do you have to contend with a Kamara, but now he's loosening it up for other defensive linemen, Rick.
Yeah, 18-year-old. Just the future is so bright. We talk about this every week. CSU and CU are really doing nothing but improving on a weekly basis.
It's true. Yep, the futures are definitely bright in Fort Collins and Boulder. We're seeing big things out of young guys. We're seeing big things out of elder statesmen for the Rams. They just are going to have to learn how to win. It's kind of been something that Sean Payton has been harping on with the Broncos, where Broncos just don't know how to win. I see a little bit out of the Rams. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. They're getting better every week.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned that matchup that's coming up. Air Force had a tricky one. You mentioned the service schools. Those are never fun to play. But let's break it down. Tell me what happened in Annapolis, Rick.
Well, the first thing that happened was what you just saw. We had 3 birds fly over. Let me tell you about the days leading up to this game. First and foremost, we talked about it last week. A change of guard was discussed with Coach Calhoun. He talked about Zach Larrier being out for more than likely multiple weeks. He talked about the opportunity given to Jensen Jones and how he felt Jensen was ready for the moment. And he talked about, some of the things they're going to try to do with a different quarterback. And I arrived in Annapolis. I went to the Naval Academy. I did the tour. I put my Air Force hat on the goat, took a picture. We posted it on our page. And then shortly thereafter.
One thing about that, I did notice in those string of pictures that you had sent me that there was a buffalo in there. So we're gonna have a chat next time we see each other.
That was a young, immature me. I completely apologize on that. And yeah, you're probably going to see it this weekend with the CSU mascot, but I'm getting more mature weekly. So eventually, I probably won't be doing that stuff because of my age. However,
so the Rams are growing up, the Buffaloes are growing up,
and
Rick's growing up. Beautiful.
We're getting older. So, that night driving back from Annapolis, I get the call, that Zach was going to start. Of course, we've talked about that's an inside deal. That message is not relayed. And up until kickoff, I'm sure they were expecting number 5. They got Zach Larrier. Navy, it's like punching a mirror, right? We play this offense. We are this offense. They're used to it. They talk about doing things different. Navy isn't doing anything really different. They're doing what they've done the last 15 times I've seen them play Air Force, and they had no answer for us on offense, but we didn't have much of an answer with the exception of a long pass play to Dane Kinnaman, which worked out nicely. There were penalties and an amazing defensive effort by Air Force.
Now, you mentioned that passing game. Is that something that got revved up because they were keying on Zach and maybe expecting a slower Zach or a more methodical offense? Was there something there? Because it seems like they were looking for the deep ball more often than they usually do.
Yeah, something was there. I honestly think Zach was about 60%. I was kind of curious to see, but coach said he saw something in practice, and when you're 7-0 and your coach has got you this far, you trust him and you say, okay, coach, we believe you, and let's try to get number 8.
Awesome. You mentioned that defensive performance. It's something that I was laughing about with my dad and my brother most of the day because what was it? 40% of the plays Air Force either had a tackle for loss or a sack. I mean, they were absolutely living in Navy's backfield. Do you think that's due to them maybe starting a freshman quarterback, not having Ty Livatai in there, or is that just as dominant as Air Force can be?
I think there was a lot of factors. I don't know if it was a coming out party, but I'll tell you, it probably gets Bo Richter on an NFL roster as an invitee. He, was out of his mind. 10 tackles, 5 for loss, sack, 6 pressures. Even when Lavatai did come in, he obviously wasn't 100% either, and they got to him. I thought Alec Mock and that pick 6 was it's weird. If you're somebody that bets these games, which I am not, but I was around people who were, they locked in at 10.5. So when Navy got that late touchdown, and went for an unsuccessful 2-point conversion, they were singing in their seats. They were very happy to get that number, and we were all happy as well.
I mean, I don't understand how Vegas always knows. They end at 10.5 and the game ends 17-6. I mean, it's unreal. You mentioned Bo. I mean, Bo played absolutely outstanding, but also you see a guy like Jonathan Youngblood. I mean, those two guys absolutely controlled the outside of the line of scrimmage there. Was Navy trying to attack that outside, or were they just getting that much pressure from the outside there?
I think it's a little bit of both. I really think what they wanted to do initially was try to open up that tackle to tackle lane in the middle. But Peyton Zadroik, we had Caden Bloom with his first start. He got half a sack, multiple tackles, um, and PJ Ramsey, just they squeeze that middle to where if you are ready to try us on the outside, to your point, Richter and Blood come and get you.
Yep, you definitely. I mean, I'm hoping Zach can stay on the field. I did notice a little lack of explosiveness there. That's a guy that his game is built on speed. And you look at it, he gets out in the open field, he makes people miss. 15 carries at 1.6 yards a carry. Again, is that something that fans can take from, where are you just playing a team that's completely knows what you're trying to do? Or is that kind of the Zach we'll see moving forward with that injured knee?
Man, that's a great question. I'm hoping that he continues to get better. I did think, when he left the game briefly because of being poked in the eye, I thought, oh man, I hope this isn't worst case scenario. We'll just have to monitor the situation. I think with some more winnable games coming after Army, maybe even including Army, we might have to give him a little bit of a break. So we'll have to monitor the situation. I think on the other side of the ball, I think Trey Taylor continues, him and Jaden Goodwin just continue to roam that defensive backfield successfully.
Well, yeah. So you were teaching me stuff about Air Force football when I went down there and watched the Wyoming game with you. And one of the guys that did stand out to me, way he can come up and lay the wood, was Goodwin. Obviously, I'd been accustomed to Trey Taylor. I've seen him play in the past, but I mean, Goodwin's a guy that could fly around the field. I'm really excited about that secondary, and it seems to be that they're gelling. That was something that you had mentioned in our preseason breakdowns, that the secondary was trying to replace some starters. I'm pretty impressed by what I see with them. What about you, Rick?
Well, the beat goes on. So we saw Jamari Bellamy with a nice interception. Jerome Galliard on the other side did very well. The season we started at Spur with Camby Goff. Camby was hurt in the first game, gave way to C.J. Boyd. C.J. was hurt during the Wyoming game, and you didn't see as much on Sunday just because we run that Service Academy defense. But going forward, I expect to see Jalen Murgison, Merg as he is affectionately known. I think Merg will be an integral part going forward on this defense, and he's going to surprise some people. A Colorado kid, right? Eagle Crest High School quarterback, defensive back, Trey Taylor's roommate. These two guys, they work well together, and we're going to see it starting in Fort Collins.
Well, you mentioned that matchup. Let's go ahead and dive into there. What are you seeing from an Air Force CSU matchup? Things that we can expect, things that you want to see out of Air Force, maybe even things you want to see out of CSU.
Well, I expect we're going to have to make some more adjustments, right? We are the best second half team in the nation statistically as far as points and yards go in the second half. You saw against Wyoming that we can struggle at times with tight ends, and they got one of the best ones I've seen in a while for CSU with Holker. And I think this game is going to be about adjustments. I think it's going to, if I was the coach, we'd probably be, 2 2-5, but I might consider giving the nation's leading yards per carry average rusher, John Lee Eldridge, more than 7 touches in the last 2 games. I might consider maybe giving Owen Burke and Emmanuel Michel some more split carries, as well as we have a tight end too, Caleb Rios. Let's try to get him the ball.
Yeah, that was, part of that passing game that we saw against Navy there was Rios was able to get free for a pretty long game. I think you mentioned those 2 matchups. The one that I'm really looking at, I kind of led into that with that question about the Air Force secondary. But the big matchup, I think, when Air Force is on defense versus CSU on offense is going to be BFN and those weapons, Holker and Horton, going against that Air Force secondary. Now, obviously, they've had issues pass protecting last year, and this year we've seen it come back a little while. So this could be one of those games where maybe you see a Bo Richter or a Youngblood really getting after the quarterback to kind of keep that secondary protected. What are you seeing? Are you seeing that defensive line being able to make those plays, or is it really going to be on Trey Taylor in the secondary to slow down that passing attack?
I think that pressure is going to cause some errors. Trey got his first career interception a couple years at Canvas Stadium against CSU. I could see him snagging another one. But my concern, it's weird because we talk about some of the offensive and defensive matchups, and really with CSU improving so much, it's going to be really interesting and fun. And I know, we talked about the number. The number, looks inflated to me, but I'm also wondering if Matthew DePore can rebound from his first adversity in his career. He's a 3-year starter. He missed 2 kicks in a service academy game. The wind was, just awful at times, but still, we got a lot of guys that are going to do some gut checks this weekend.
Yeah, I still have confidence in that. I think that weather, it looked brutal. Just watching it on TV, I can't imagine what it was like actually being there. But it looked like that wind was just howling. Was it as bad as it looked on TV?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely was.
Okay. Well, let's flip it. The defense of the Rams, they've been allowing a lot of running yards. They've been allowing about 160 yards per game. Obviously, Air Force is going to try and run the ball as much as they can. You talk about getting guys like John Lee Eldridge involved, maybe Owen Burke. What do you see out of the attack here? How is Air Force going to try and attack the Rams? And how are the Rams going to try and slow down that vaunted running game?
We had a lot of success the last time we played them there on running the counter trap. And that's something that's not always in our arsenal. We do a lot of the fullback dives and the AB gap stuff, but Adam Karras and Wesley Nandago, Thor Paglialong, Caleb Holcomb, Mason Carlin, and we mentioned Caleb Rios. These guys just continue to drive opponents forward. I'm thinking we're going to try to run at least for a while between the tackles. We'll see. I think our speed game on the outside is recovering, like you had mentioned with Zach. So, and maybe we slip Kinnaman out or maybe Cade Harris and get them some surprise balls.
Yeah, that was awesome seeing Kevin fly down the field because I know he's a guy that's, kind of, again, been buried on the depth chart a little bit. So it was good to see him out there and running 94 yards down the field for, I believe, a school record touchdown, right? Longest touchdown ever in school history.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned that offensive line. I think, if I'm remembering right, I think it was Ethan Jackman actually was walking off the field for a little bit there. How's he doing? Is he healthy? Is he going to be ready for the CSU?
Yeah, so I didn't mention him on purpose, but we can talk about it. He did get banged up. I'm going to be a little vague on the injury, just
of course,
just because of Air Force. But he's a kid that has never missed time, and missing a little bit against Navy was out of character. Definitely expecting to see him there on Saturday.
Okay. And he brings a lot of size. Usually Air Force lines tend to be a little smaller, so you see a guy that's 6'4", 310. It's a pretty big missing piece of an offensive line.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you got those bookends over on the CSU side with Kamara and our newly emerging 18-year-old phenom on the other end. I really believe we're gonna have to give our best game. I think this could be our toughest game of the year, really.
I'm totally with you, and it's kind of the same thing as when CSU plays CU. You can kind of throw records out the window. In a rivalry game, all bets are off. What are you thinking about with that rivalry aspect? How are you feeling about that there?
Well, Tony, I don't want to jinx ourselves, but we've never lost at that stadium.
Mm-hmm.
It's the trophy that we play for is the Falcon Ram Trophy. I do believe that CSU has beat us. I think one time in the last 9 years, if I remember right. We tend to have their number. I don't think it's going to be like that forever. This is probably our last push to get past this team for a while because they're just getting better.
Yeah. Last thing I want to get to before we move on to CU. Air Force has moved up to number 19. I mean, this is looking like a special season, Rick. Obviously, you've heard some of the guys talking about it in media saying, hey, we can't look at the rankings. We can't look at going undefeated. But we're fans. I'm a fan. My mind is wandering. How are you feeling about the team right now?
Well, I'm like you. I'm excited. I learned early on before we were ranked. I mentor quite a few of these young men, and I think there was a time or two that I started to kind of play what if with these guys, and I'll tell you, I don't usually get shut down, but man, I got shut down in those instances. They don't want to talk about it. They want to literally, and I know it's a cliche, but they literally want to focus on what did I do to get better today in practice? And then Saturday, what can I do to help my team win? And it's crazy because I've seen it before where it's just talk. It's not with these guys. Man, I thinking New Year's Six stuff, possibly. I'm thinking, about some of these opportunities. I've got Army on my mind, so I sure hope they don't.
That's awesome. It's definitely cool to see. Obviously we're in the last year of the 14 playoff. I'm not sure if you had seen it, but there was an On3 article the other day that was projecting if there was a 12-team playoff. Right now, Air Force would be the 12th. They'd be in the 12-team playoff for the national championship. It's really cool to see.
It is, and I'm excited because we've had a little bit of a timeout with your bye week. I'm excited to see how our Colorado Buffaloes rebound from that excruciating loss against Stanford, and if some of those things Coach was talking about in the press conference, if those things have been corrected.
Let's get into it. Well, as you transitioned there, it was perfect way of saying it. The Buffaloes definitely needed that bye week because they had a disappointing loss. The biggest lead that they have ever led up in school history against Stanford. And they have to go on the road and play an absolute monster of a game against a ranked UCLA team that coincidentally has just beaten that same Stanford team 42-7. So kind of the final score we were expecting, Rick, when we watched that first half. That's how UCLA went out and handled business. We see that there are reinforcements incoming. Guys like Sevion Washington, the starting right tackle that has been out because of injury. He returned to practice this week in preparation for the Bruins game. I'm worried about this game. You see a big spread again, a 17-point spread. But this has been one of those games, while I say I'm worried about it, that I've always kind of looked at and said, man, if CU plays up to their caliber, they could steal this one. I think we had the question from one of our watchers a few weeks ago. I said, this could be a game they could steal. I could definitely see it. I'm worried about the game, Rick, but there's something there telling me that CU is going to rebound. What about you?
Man, I'm hoping. I really like, we all saw the Saturday Night Live spoof that they did last week, and kind of making light of. But the truth of the matter is, this culture change, though it's backed off just a tad, this culture change is real, and I think they're going to come out. And I don't know if it'll be enough. I hope it is, but I really believe you're going to see probably the first at least 3+ quarters of passionate football this year. We've played a lot of halves recently, and I'm ready. I'm ready for these guys to let UCLA know, hey, we're also here.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you said that they need to start playing with a little pride. It's not coincidental, but I'm wearing the pride and tradition shirt because that second half of football is not living up to the pride and tradition quote that CU is famous for. They need to start taking a little more pride and looking at that tradition, because that second half was brutal to watch. And I think you're right. I think the guys are going to come in fired up off the bye week, get some of their starters back. And I think it's going to be a tussle. I think it's going to be eerily similar to what we saw the first game of the year with TCU and UCU kind of going back and forth. It could be high-scoring game. I know UCLA has had a really good defense. But there's other teams that have had good defense that CU has been able to score on. I think they're going to come in prideful, and I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I can't wait to see it. I hope they rebound as good as I am hyping them up to. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun game to see. As far as what? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you think with this extra week off, do you think that the coordinators are maybe searching for something different, or they saw some things? Because we talked about it last week. There were some things that worked against Stanford, though be it a half, but some things that you could say, okay, maybe we can build on this.
Yeah, I think a big one is that I think the position change of Trevor Woods is here to stay. Coach Prime actually talked about it during his weekly press conference today, but he loves having Trevor Woods at the linebacker position. So that was something that we saw new out of the Stanford game. Him playing closer to the line of scrimmage, playing a more traditional linebacker spot. That's here to stay. I mean, Trevor is a bright kid. He can come up and lay the wood on people, but he has the athleticism of a safety. So, maybe there might be some drawbacks in the running game because you don't have as big of a guys as like a Juwan Mitchell or a Marvin Ham. But I like that change, and I think it's here to stay. So those could be, some of the little things that they're changing here and there. I also think we need to get that running game wrapped up. It's something I've been harping on forever. But that's how you keep Shedeur standing upright. That's how you keep the offensive line engaged. Let them go out and smash people a little bit instead of always having to absorb the contact during pass rush. We need to look at ways to get this offense and defense revved up and to be able to have them consistently perform for an entire game. I think that's going to be huge. That's a huge thing you pointed out there, Rick.
Yeah, I mentioned about the fragile ego of our specialists. Matt's gonna have to come back against CSU, and Mata does miss, as we saw.
I guess he does.
I was very surprised. I'd never seen him miss.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. He's deadly accurate, but he's deadly accurate from about 40 in. So once you start extending him beyond there, he doesn't have the leg that a Jace Feely does. That's kind of It's kind of pick your poison there. If you're going to be trying that 50-yard field goal, Jace is probably your better option, but he's not going to be as accurate. It's going to be really interesting to see. Like I said, this 2 weeks, I'm going to be really fascinated to see because it's going to tell the story of the rest of the season. We had that huge letdown in 2018 where we blew a 28-point lead to Oregon State, and that prompted a 7-game losing streak after starting 5-0. Are we going to be a team that folds like the 2018 team, or are we going to be a team that rebounds and can win a couple games we're not supposed to in order to be bowl eligible? I'm going to stay hopeful. I'm going to say the 2023 version is different than the 2018 version. I believe in Coach Prime. I believe Coach Prime that we're going to get this hummed up and they're going to make a bowl. They're going to win some games they're not supposed to.
Well, we'll see if that optimism reflects in our predictions.
Sounds good, man. You talk about predictions. Let's get into it real quick. Let's look at the Air Force and CSU game. What do you have for us, Rick?
Well, I think I think that this is gonna, like I said before, be a pretty heated contest. I don't think it'll come down to a game-winning field goal like UNLV had last weekend. I do believe it's going to be close, however. I think we'll figure out some things on defense, and I'm going to go 31-20 Air Force. What do you think?
I like that. I see the 12-point spread. I see a 48-point over-under. You're kind of right in that range there. I really like that. I'm going to say I like what I saw out of the Rams defense. Now, don't get me wrong. UNLV cannot run the football like Air Force can. So I think it's going to be a little lower scoring, but I do think the Falcons defense shows up to play. I am still I can't get over how many times I saw those guys in the Navy backfield just disrupting plays. So I am going to go Air Force 27. So Matt makes a couple more field goals to 14.
All right. That's I like keeping them to 14. That'll keep us top in the nation.
I like that. I did that just for you, Rick.
Appreciate that. So that takes us to the opposite coast where I am right now, to UCLA and CU. What are you thinking? Tell us a little bit. What time is the game? What kind of options do we have to view this?
Mm-hmm. Of course. So thankfully, for whatever reason, I guess we only play the late games when CU is here. But this is going to be a nice 5:30 kickoff for us locally here in the Mountain Time Zone. And I don't care about any other time zones because I live here. So it'll be 5:30 Mountain. You can see your Buffaloes on ABC. So another nationally televised game here on the ESPN network, but this time on ABC. I kind of gave a little bit of a peek of my prediction, saying that I believe it was going to be high scoring. I believe that CU will be able to score on the Bruins defense, mostly because kind of saw the cracks a few weeks ago. So UCLA has had a great defense all year, but they allowed 36 points against Oregon State. And not only that, but DJ Uiagalelei, was able to pass the ball on them. Got the passing game rolling a little bit. Yes, that is a team that's always going to rely on the run, but they were able to show some cracks. So I think coaches have been focusing in on that game film, seeing that 36 points that Oregon State goes, and they're going to be shooting for that. So I have CU in an upset, taking out the Bruins 42-38.
Man, that sounds like just what the doctor ordered. I unfortunately am gonna go a little bit different. I do see probably 42 points for UCLA and 28 for the Buffs. I think they hold tight, and UCLA might pull away in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's a good prediction. I could definitely see that. So, Rick, have you been able to keep track of the other local schools? Have you been on the beach, or has that not been on the itinerary?
Well, it has not.
That's totally
I
fine.
did drop the ball this week. I do know that CSU Pueblo has a big game at home this weekend. You know, you had mentioned that the CU and UCLA game is a 5:30 local time in Colorado. Man, this is one of those opportunities, and especially with your Halloween regiment that you have with the kids and Halloween parties. This is a true split screen opportunity, right? CU 5:30, Air Force just a half hour before at 5 o'clock. We're going to be on. It looks like CBS Sports will be the coverage on that one. We can split screen it and keep everybody informed.
That's awesome. I would be remiss if we did not shout out somewhere that's really close to both of our homes, as we've talked about. But Colorado School of Mines topping Division II right now, number one ranking in the country. As they go, I believe they will play Western Colorado, which is the number 9 team.
Yeah,
this Saturday.
Man, that team, the last handful of years, it just keeps churning out quality football players from every position, and of course, they're way smarter than us.
Yeah, exactly. Those Mines guys are smart. My dad will be thrilled to hear me say that on tape again. But yeah, those Mines guys are smart. I think didn't they have a guy that won the Division II version of the Heisman and get a cup of coffee with the Broncos? Quarterback.
Yeah,
I'm blanking on his name. Yeah. But man, they have really churned out some players. So anything else? Final thoughts of the day, Rick?
You know, I'm gonna just enjoy the East Coast. I really I really made this one last as I do from time to time. Of course I still have my my conversations with the guys I mentor. I know the team is focused. They they're healthy for the most part. I know we talked about Zach, and he's a full participant in practice. So we're just gonna have to see what happens. And I'm just hoping that we keep on this roll. But as hopeful as I am of Air Force continuing to win, I'm so happy to have CU and CSU not only competitive, but man, they're getting better. The recruiting looks great. This is a good time to be a Colorado football fan.
Yeah, you talk about that recruiting and just kind of wrap up here. We did see not only from the football side, but actually on the basketball side as well. CU picked up some really important 4-stars. I'd be completely remiss if I didn't talk about Antoine Hill Jr., quarterback out of Georgia. This guy's a special athlete. CU got us a good one here from the 2025 class. And not to be outdone, I actually wrote an article on it, but Sebastian Rancik from Slovakia and is actually playing his final high school season out in California area, signed on the dotted line to come play for Tad Boyle. And on top of all that, we got the women, kind of an exciting announcement. I'm going to tell you, Rick. We got the women tipping off against the national champion LSU Tigers on November 6th in Las Vegas. And your boy's going to be there covering it live as part of the media. Just got my credential approved today. So I will be in Vegas covering the Buffaloes and the Tigers for all of you.
Man, I'm glad you're making those sacrifices for your career. I really appreciate that. And, maybe while you're there, put $5 on Air Force to win the national championship. You never know.
I love it. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week. Rick, be well, my friend.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great one.